Good evening, fellow heretics. Welcome to Nerds and Heresy. We've got something special for you tonight. But first, let's watch this.
Hold on to your butts.
Pre-record this video and edit it, make it look nice. I had a timestamps all written out, outline, like a grown-up YouTuber. Then I remembered it's Martin Luther King Day, and which means my kids didn't go to school, so I could not record anything. So I figured, fuck.
No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Comedic timing. Sean McDowell went live on Saturday. And he interviewed a guy named Dr. Jeremiah Johnston. I've never heard of him before. So I had to look him up. I'm going to be doing my screen like crazy. Be patient with me. So this is him. Dr. Jeremiah Johnston is a New Testament scholar, professor, apologist, and regular speaker at university campuses, churches, and conferences. His passion is equipping Christians to give intellectually informed accounts of what they believe. Dr. Johnston completed his doctoral residency in Oxford in partnership in Oxford Center for Mission Studies and received his PhD in Middlesex University in the UK with commendations and his master's degrees from Acadia University and Midwest Baptist Theological Seminary. So not terrible. It's not terrible credentials. He's been around the block. He's seen the arguments. So hopefully he's got something good for us. Spoiler alert. Anyway, so he just wrote a book. He's got multiple books, but this is his latest one. Body of Proof: The 7 Best Reasons to Believe in the Resurrection of Jesus and Why It Matters Today. So, like I said, he went on Josh McDowell's channel, and he, let me make sure I got the right option so y'all can hear the audio. I did not. Glad I checked that. Okay. So we went on there and gave the 7 reasons. Now, number 4 is the newness, the new hotness. And he just dropped this truth bomb to the world on Saturday. This is the first dramatic reveal. New apologetics just dropped. Anyway, so we're going to get to that. But he gives all 7. And I figured, let's respond to them, shall we? So that being said, let me get out my cheat sheet here. Just figure out when to stop the video. Okay. Got about 1 minute and 50 seconds. Well, here's first argument.
All right, Jay, let's jump in. You say reason number 1, society is transformed everywhere Christianity is introduced and embraced. So what do you mean by this? And why is that a reason to believe Jesus rose from the dead?
The resurrection event overwhelmed the followers of Jesus to such an extent that it became the core of their teaching and the very center of their practice and faith and life. So much so that the Dominical tradition of Jesus was actually, which is the teaching of Jesus, which was actually usurped by the event itself. The early Christian movement experienced the resurrection of Jesus, and it revolutionized their worldview to such an extent that everywhere the gospel goes, suddenly we see the gospel clashing with the worldviews of the time. And the cut and thrust of the Roman Empire, I've written a whole book on it, was hell on earth. And so we can trace out of the upper room the teaching that Jesus physically, bodily rose from the grave married with the experience of the early Christians who actually saw him, touched him, had dined with him in his resurrection state, this caused them, it motivated them to spread the message because it is true. It has a life transforming value, and that value extends to all people. Everything from the treatment of women and children to the very bedrock of what we might.
If there's one thing we know Christianity is good for, it's the treatment of women and
Call
children.
Christian civilization or Western civilization. And so we lay out 10 ways in which in the book Christianity had Christianity been.
Okay. So the crux of his argument is society is transformed everywhere Christianity is introduced. That's dumb. Societies don't transform because of the religions, because the ideology that comes with it. Christianity is inherently a proselytizing religion. You can't just practice it on your own. Part of the religion is spreading it, and that's what happens with Christianity. You look at Constantine when he conquered Rome. One of the first things he did was he passed what was called the Edict of Milan, and it made it didn't just make it was illegal to be Christian at the time, but that edict made it not just legal again, but favorable. He started giving privilege because he adopted Christ as his patron because he saw a vision, and then he won the war, and he attributed that war to Jesus. So when he took Rome, he built churches. He confiscated land from the Jews and from pagans and gave it to the church. He gave clergy tax-exempt status. He gave them the power to write and enact laws. He commissioned professional scribes to make copies of the books that would later compose the New Testament. So that's what it is. Like you get a king or a prophet, like the case of Muhammad, imposes ideology, it catches on, and then suddenly, so it's not, you can't act like your religion is such a good idea that it just organically spreads and everyone's like, oh, this is the truth. You have to know they make it the truth. They tell you what the truth is. You're not allowed to think anything else, or at the very least you can, but it's not going to get you very far. Where to put my thing? Yeah, so the idea that society is transformed everywhere Christianity is introduced is dumb. It's also not true. Society's not transformed everywhere Christianity is introduced. Plenty of societies reject Christianity. I mean, look at us. Christianity is shrinking in our country. Is that evidence that it's bullshit? I think so. Okay. Reason number 2. Moving right along. Get my timestamp here. There we go.
That say, Jesus didn't really know what he was doing. He certainly didn't claim to be God. He wasn't that sure of his messianic.
Wait, I think I skipped ahead a little bit. Yeah. Back up just a smidge. Just a scotch. I don't know if that's a word. It is now.
Great questions lined up here. Can't wait to get to them. But let's move to reason number 2. You say Jesus called it, meaning he predicted it. Go.
There are modern skeptics, some that are darlings that say, Jesus didn't really know what he was doing. He certainly didn't claim to be God. He wasn't that sure of his messianic agenda. People who came later deified him, and in so doing put words in his mouth. But what does the scripture actually show us when we open the New Testament documents? And I believe that the New Testament documents are historical documents.
Yeah, because you have to believe they're historical documents in order to believe what's in them, because like he pointed out, that skeptics point out, the Gospels were written decades after the events that they record. We don't know what Jesus said. We all we have is what his followers claimed about him. So did he predict his death? We don't know. Also, it's possible he predicted his death. You want to know why? He walked around Rome saying he was the Messiah. That meant he believed God was going to come and destroy Rome. So yeah, if you walked around saying, fuck Rome, with your middle finger up, fuck Rome, and then you're like, yeah, they're probably going to kill me for that. That's not a weird prediction. It's not weird at all. Big shocker, Rome killed you. Big shocker, they crucified you. Because, yeah, you had an apocalyptic message that you were spreading to everybody in the Roman Empire. Well, not everybody in the Roman Empire. Y'all know what I'm saying.
Privilege the biblical text. I mean,
Okay.
Sean, when I was in Oxford at Keble College at Faculty of Theology with Marcus Bachmuel, they made it very clear that you should not privilege the text of the Bible, but carry out your arguments. And one thing that these historical documents that make up the New Testament show us is that Jesus, in fact, did predict his death and resurrection. Mark 8:31, Mark 9:31, Mark 10:33 and 34, and Mark 14, when Jesus is asked, by the scholars, the nomikos, the scribes, the grammatus in Greek, who are you, Jesus? And, tell us, why have you come? And we hear it in Greek. He would have said it in Aramaic, but in Greek, it comes out, ego eimi, I am.
Okay, so a bit about that passage. In context, that's the scholars or the scribes saying, is it true that you're the son of the blessed one? I think it says. And he says, I am. And soon you'll see the Son of Man coming on the cloud. That's not him. So I am in the Bible is sort of the divine name, right? It's given to, in some form or another, to like Samuel, where God says, I will be a father to him and he will be a son to me. He says the same thing to David. You are my son. Today I've begotten you, right? Like we hear in the Gospels when Jesus is baptized. And Psalm 45, this is an interesting one. God is speaking in this psalm, and he says, God calls the king God. It's God says, your throne, O God, will be forever. Isn't that interesting? There's also a verse in Psalms that calls Moses the Messiah, the Messiah in the wilderness, more specifically. So these type of titles are to say, to go establish some sort of divine authority to your name. In this passage particularly, especially since it's in Mark, there's our earliest gospel, there's not a whole lot of divinity to Jesus compared to like what it would be in John, where he does say, I and the Father are one, things like that. But this is just answering the question. I'm the son of the blessed one. Yeah. He's not giving himself the divine name there. And I think that's pretty obvious.
Jesus is making a distinctive claim to deity linked with Yahweh of the Old Testament. And he says, I'm going to give you one sign. It's the sign of Jonah.
By the way, hi everyone in the chat. Sorry, I didn't say hi to y'all. I'm bad at that. I apologize. Hi to Miss Melody and everybody else. I see y'all's questions. We'll get to those at the end. The cat's playing with a marker lid behind me. It's distracting. Okay. Where were we?
Rise from the dead. And he did that. So he called it, I said, again, for those that are just joining us, perhaps you're new to Christianity. If Christianity had a hashtag, it would have been on the third day. Jesus does something that no one else could do. He messianizes Hosea 6. On the second day, on the third day you will raise this up. And that's one of Jesus's darling passages.
Okay. He messianizes Isaiah 6. Here's the problem. Specifically, he mentions Isaiah 6:2. Isaiah 6 is divided into two parts. Jesus does quote Isaiah 6:6, which is shit. I might have pulled up. My brain is going blank now. Where did I put you? Oh, I have it. I have it pulled up. Where's my thing? Duh. Hang on. I'll show y'all what I'm talking about. Okay. So Isaiah 6. So Jesus does quote verse 6 for I delight in loyalty rather than sacrifice. But Jesus actually misquotes it. Jesus says, I delight in mercy, not sacrifice. But in this, it's I delight in loyalty, not sacrifice. I don't know if the original word in Hebrew is ambiguous enough that you can make it, translate it to a different word that's that different. Maybe sometimes it happens. I'm not sure, but it is pretty different. But the point of Isaiah 6 is the second part is a critique of the first part. Let me show you what I mean. Let's read it. Let's read it together. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us, but he will heal us. He has wounded us, but he will bandage us. He will revive us after 2 days. He will raise us up on the third day, that he may live before him, or that we may live before him. So let us know, let us press on and know on to the Lord. His going forth is as certain as the dawn, and he will come to us like the rain, like the spring rain watering the earth. Now, watch this. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? For your loyalty is like a morning cloud, and like the dew which goes away early. Therefore I have hewn them into pieces by the prophets. I've slain them by the words of the mouth. So this is God saying, I am trying to get y'all to be obedient, to be consistently obedient. But up here, they're just like, yeah, God's going to deliver us. And God's like, no, y'all aren't getting it. That's what's happening here in this passage. So to say that Jesus is messianizing this passage, it displays all kinds of misunderstanding of what's going on in the actual text. So yeah, bad apologist. Bad. Let's go back. All right, are we done with the argument number? Is it 2? Yes. No. Yes. Okay. Next reason.
Demonstrated resurrection power. Go.
Absolutely. And this is number 3 didn't get at the time. And I think that's why that's why Judas fell out of the boat.
Mm-hmm. Good correction. The last one we want to confuse is Judas with Jesus. So
yes.
Demonstrated resurrection power. Go.
Absolutely. And this is number 3, because if Jesus can proclaim that he's going to be resurrected himself, that he is the resurrection and life, he better prove that he can actually do this, that he has power over death. And we actually see again, there are 8 resurrections, by the way, in the scriptures. There are 3 in the Old Testament. Jesus performs 3. Then we have 2 in the book of Acts. And Jesus, I use this word adumbrations. He adumbrates. He foreshadows his forthcoming resurrection by raising.
I'm not even going to bullshit y'all. Not even going to bullshit y'all. I have never heard the word adumbrations in my life. Right? I had to look it up. And yeah, it just means foreshadowing. Right? So this guy finds a word that maybe sounds a little bit more science-y. He's like, oh, God adumbrations his resurrection. Like, fuck out of here. Come on. Really? That's the move you're doing? I hate that shit. I hate when people try to sound smart when it's not necessary to sound smart. Speak plainly.
Raising recently dead individuals from the grave. Now, I make an interpretive distinction in my new book, Body of Proof, Sean. And again, this is what I've learned along the way. We can use emic and etic categories. We can bring certain language to the text that helps us have more precision in our interpretive tradition. And so, for example, like Trinity is not, we all know, is not
Sure.
in the Bible. When I say that Jesus resuscitated 3 individuals in the New Testament, showing that he had power over resurrection, I'm speaking about the widow of Nain's son. I'm thinking about Jairus' daughter. I'm thinking about John 11, Lazarus, his good friend who could not have been more dead in the Jewish motif, dead 4 days. Jesus is showing that he has power over death, but these individuals would die twice.
Okay. So, a couple things about those resurrection accounts. And this is going to be funny. Y'all are going to enjoy this. So on the resurrection of Lazarus is in John 11. It's the last, the latest gospel written, the end of the first century. And then it was I forget the name of the other one. But the other one is one of them is only in Luke. But the healing of is this the right? Yeah, there it is. Let me make sure I get my screenage together. But the healing of the official's daughter, I think, is mentioned in all three of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It's in all three of them. And I think there's some truth to it, and I'll explain why. Because, hold on, let me kind of switch my screenage here again. I wish I had a easier way to do this. That's all right, though. Because the father comes up to Jesus and says, my daughter's dead. And Jesus says, she's not dead. She's asleep. Wake up. And yells at her to wake up, and she gets up, right? So you can imagine, where is it? How did I get here? This isn't where I was supposed to be. Oh, don't tell me I lost it. I want to find it again. It's bullshit. Did it actually hit the back of the forward button? Oh, this is so funny. I gotta find it. Just a second. Just a second. Apologize for my lack of professionalism. I had this up. I don't know how it changed. It's not going to be as funny if I can't show y'all. How could I not find this story? That's not the one. All right, we're just going. Anyway, so the story is, yeah, the father says, my daughter's dead, and he goes, she's not dead, she's asleep. So he yells at her, wake up, and she wakes up. So you can imagine how when the oral tradition portion of the story is in circulation, people might be like, how do you know she was actually dead? Maybe she was actually sleeping. It literally says before that there was many flute players and the crowd was in disarray. So you can see how they'd be like, how do you know she was actually dead and she wasn't just sleeping? Oh, well, there were flute players. Yeah, lots of flute players, and they were loud. Yeah, there's no way she would be sleeping through that. There's no way. So yeah, she was definitely dead. It's funny as shit. I don't know where it went. That's all right. Yeah, this whole Jesus having to display resurrection or authority over the dead, is that what it said? Jesus demonstrates resurrection power. How is that evidence of the resurrection? There's stories that he can resurrect people. There's stories in the Old Testament of people being resurrected. Was it Ezekiel made a bunch of dry bones grow flesh and get up and start walking around? Okay, I think we're at the newness. Here it is. Big reveal. New argument for the resurrection of Jesus just dropped. Here we go.
Reason number 4, Jesus rose from the grave. No motivation to invent Jesus' resurrection narrative is evident. Explain.
Judaism in the time of Jesus is a coherent religion. There were other great rabbis and teachers who were loved, who were honored, and who were remembered. And any Jew, if you and I lived in first century Judaism, we would have honored our rabbi or this great teacher. And sure enough, yes, we would have believed this great Jewish teacher would rise again someday in the general resurrection. Sean, if you and I were followers of a rabbi called James, and so-called James is really a great, phenomenal guy. He even might do some miracles. He might even have some interesting stories about his origins. And he dies. We can honor our Rabbi James. We can believe that he will live again in the general resurrection. Absolutely. And we can carry on even his teaching. We have no psychological motivation to invent a resurrection narrative about our rabbi, because we don't need it. Because Judaism is a coherent religion, we already believe in resurrection. We'll just get there a different way. In the general resurrection someday, when all Jews are risen from the dead, our rabbi, who we hold in high esteem and who we very...
Okay. Did y'all get that? Are y'all impressed? Is your mind blown? I don't know why he calls it evidence. It's literally in the title, new evidence. That's not evidence. It's maybe an argument, but it's not still. That's definitely not our evidence. So he's saying that a resurrection narrative was not necessary. And there's no psychological motivation to invent a resurrection story. You have no idea the psychological state of people that lived 2,000 years ago in Palestine. You have no idea. I mean, it was some idea, but you can't psychoanalyze them from here. Also, hey, they were apocalyptic Jews. How's that for psychological motivation? They thought they were in the end times. They thought Jesus was going to return. And once you know it, hey, they just happened to see him return. They were motivated. Their motivation for the resurrection was that they were motivated for a resurrection. If Jesus was predicting his resurrection, like he said in his previous point, they would be expecting it. That's their psychological state. Our Savior, our Messiah, said he's going to resurrect. There's your psychological motivation, not to make your Messiah to be a liar. But also, I don't think they invented the resurrection story. I think they saw something, probably bereavement-induced hallucination, something like that. One guy says they saw him, and then they all feel the peer pressure of those around them. Yeah, I saw him too, because I don't want to feel left out. So suddenly you have a handful of people all saying, all of his followers, by the way. All his followers see him. Nobody else. So I don't think they invented. It's like that argument when they say the persecution, martyrdom argument. You know, that they wouldn't get martyred for something that they knew was a lie, that they made up. I don't think they made it up. They believed what they believed. I think Paul believed what he believed. People believed batshit crazy things all the time back then, and hey, still do. Just because it's wrong and crazy doesn't mean they don't genuinely believe it. So, argument's not holding up too well. But there's a second part. I forgot to tell y'all. This is new evidence, part deuce. I'm going to get my timestamp right.
Is going to impact lots of people. We see so much embarrassing narrative. And this is what I would come back to Dale Allison with. I keep thinking about that first question you asked me. The gospel writers do not hide the embarrassing narrative that we read in the gospels. And they don't do that because the stories are true. And my whole crux of that chapter at the end of my book, if
it's called the criteria of embarrassment. It's a really weak criteria.
The gospel writers invented the resurrection story. They did a terrible job. And why can I say that? Did I just come up with that? So my area of specialty is I'm a specialist in extra-canonical gospels, second century extra-canonical gospels. I don't say apocryphal because in England that's thought to be being pejorative or privileging the biblical text. So extra-canonical gospels, these are gospels-like writings, with about 70 of which that didn't make it into the New Testament canon. My primary text is what came to be known as the Gospel of Peter. The Gospel of Peter is written in the late 2nd century, and it seems to be responding to the very same criticisms that we're talking about in this show. We have early objectors like Celsus and Porphyry. These would be 2nd and 3rd century objectors who ridicule, they attack the Christian faith for its lowbrow attempt to convince us that Jesus was resurrected. They didn't even see the actual event. In fact, we only know about the resurrection because of female witnesses.
Okay. So he mentions Contra Celsus, which is a book written by Origen about the end of the 2nd century, I think. It's written in response to, like you said, a guy named Celsus. Celsus was one of the most outspoken critics of Christianity in the 2nd century, and it's hilarious. Like, Origen records all his points, and if you read them as a skeptic, you just laugh your ass off. Let me show y'all. Let me show y'all probably my favorite passage. It's like a 300. It's almost like, I think it's like 270 pages. So I haven't read it. Not gonna pretend like I read all of it. Let me show y'all probably my favorite thing I've ever seen in it so far. This is like Twitter trollery right here. Let's start this line right here. And in all their writings, it mentions made of the tree of life and a resurrection of the flesh by means of the tree, because I imagine their teacher was nailed to a cross and was a carpenter by craft, so that if he had chanced to have been cast from a precipice, or thrust into a pit, or suffocated by hanging, or had been a leather cutter, or a stone cutter, or a worker of iron, there would have been invented a precipice of life beyond the heavens, or a pit of resurrection, or a cord of immortality, or a blessed stone, or an iron of love, or a sacred leather. Y'all see what's going on there? He's just absolutely mocking, like, the cross. The cross. If he had died, if he was hung, people would be walking around with a little hangman's noose around their neck instead of a cross. That's what he's saying. It's fucking savage. Yeah. Celsus did not fuck around. But back to the argument itself. Where's my thing? That's just the criterion of embarrassment. That's not. Hang on, I lost my place. Yeah, he says if they invented it, they did a terrible job. Well, no, and the point he makes is one of the criticism that Celsus makes is if Jesus resurrected, it's kind of probably heard several atheists like me say this. Why did he only appear to his followers? Why he could have appeared to Pilate? He could have appeared to the Romans that crucified him. He could have appeared to anybody, but he only appeared to his followers. What's that about? Well, in the Gospel of Peter, it rectifies that problem. It says he does appear to everybody, but in the Gospel of Peter, he appears as like 1,000-foot tall angel, I think, and the cross resurrects with him. And the cross is 1,000 times tall. And I think the cross talks. Anyway, the point is, when the original Gospels authors were writing these things, they couldn't just say, yeah, he did appear to the emperor. They can't just make that stuff up. They can't say he did appear to everybody, because then everybody would be like, no, he fucking didn't. You're dumb. So they kept it to themselves. And then later they embellished that claim more and more. When all those people were dead, then more Gospels were written saying, yeah, he actually did appear to these people. It's a shame you can't go back and ask them because they're dead now. But if you could, they would totally tell you that they saw him too. Yeah, that's how that works. Okay. Next argument. Oh, Pat, you're gonna have a fun one with this one. Nat, you two are about to lose your shit. Where's my timestamp? 34. Here we go.
That's a pretty strong word. Support the gospel's resurrection work. And then maybe you and I can come back and take some of those point by point in due time. Maybe as it gets closer to Easter, we'll do something like that.
I would love that.
Awesome. Let's shift to number 5. You say written and archaeological sources overwhelmingly. That's a pretty strong word. Support the gospel's resurrection narratives.
The juridical procedure that we see playing out in the Gospels is exactly what we find in Jewish burial traditions of the time. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. Jody Magnus, an atheist archaeologist from the University of North Carolina, who I footnote in the book, and others. So she has no theological motivation to say this, says, yes, the Gospels get it right. And so when you study the archaeology of burial traditions, in Judaism, we see that everything that we read in the Gospels smacks of authenticity. So that's point number 5. I highly recommend that one because you need to know something about Jewish burial traditions, because you're going to hear other thinkers like Bart Ehrman, Sean, who claim that Jesus' body was likely buried in a criminal's tomb, if buried at all, and it could have been even eaten by wild animals. John Dominic Crossan claimed that Jesus' body wasn't buried, it was eaten by dogs.
Okay, so because the gospel accounts get the burial traditions right is not evidence that they're factually or historically correct. It's evidence that they were written by Jews. The gospel authors were written by Jews. They knew these customs, and they wrote them into them. Paul himself was also a Jew. He did not mention a burial. But he says Jesus was buried. But that was more like something else. He didn't say he was buried in a tomb. Doesn't mention Joseph of Arimathea. We don't have I don't think we have any accounts of someone being taken down and given a proper burial. Other than maybe Yohanan was buried in the 1st century. He was a Jew, but I think he was an aristocrat. And we don't know what his crime was or anything. But what kills me is he says the written evidence is overwhelming. Let me show you all something. Let's talk about written evidence. Where'd my thing go? Wrong one. Okay. So this is the Jewish War by Josephus, right? Let's type in crucifixion. 14 results. They crucified 800 men. They crucified 2,000. They crucified... Where is it? Yeah, 2,000. A multitude. They crucified a multitude. And a lot of these were Jews, right? Tens of thousands of people. Accounts of tens of thousands of people being crucified, many of which were Jews. Probably most were Jews. Yeah, by a pretty large majority, probably Jews. Let's look at buried. They're buried. U-R-R-Y. They spell buried. Bury. Wait, this is preserved in honey? It was sent to the Jews. I can't even remember what I was looking for here. Now I'm just fascinated. What do you mean he was buried in honey? Or preserved in honey? I'll be damned. His dead body lay on the ground, preserved in honey, till it was sent to the Jews in Antony. Anyway, is that a thing? Preserving bodies in honey?
Yes.
Well, I get that now. Okay. Where was I? ADHD brain. Oh, yeah, shit. Yeah, typically speaking, bodies were left up on the cross to be picked apart by scavengers. It's not very likely bodies would be taken down. There were provisions made. If you were like an aristocrat or a Roman soldier, you could be taken down and your body can be given to a family member. This privilege would not have been given to someone like Jesus, who died as someone claiming to be the Messiah. He's one of those people they would have left up to show everybody. Hey, anybody else want to walk around talking shit about Rome? You'll end up like him. He's crow's food right now. That's why they did that. And in that time, the method of your burial was even more important it was more feared than your death. Like, they weren't so much worried about death. They were more worried about what was going to happen to them in the afterlife, because their body was going to be taken apart, which means they probably weren't going to have a whole body in the afterlife. That's why it was so important. And that's why later writers said, "Oh, we got to make it so he was buried, like, nice, like, we can't have his body being taken apart." Paul didn't seem to give a shit what happened to Jesus' body. He didn't care. He's like, yeah, he resurrected. Whatever. Details, not important. He says the resurrection is a mystery. Doesn't have all the answers. But then later, people start coming up with all the answers. Fucking interesting, right? Okay. Moving right along. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he thinks the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the legit place where Jesus was buried and crucified. Yeah. That decision was made in the 4th century. This church was built, and they found I'm trying to remember the story. They found a tomb that had been filled previously. And then they were like, hey, let's make this the spot where Jesus was buried. But yeah, that was decided in the 4th century. So, but he thinks it's legit. Like, come on. That's almost as bad as believing the Shroud of Turin is legit. Okay, where are we at? This is a fun one. Oh, no, wait. I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, yeah, this is 38. This is an argument. This is just extra that I wanted to. How the fuck do you figure the resurrection is under-preached and under-studied? There's not enough books. He said they found 12 on Amazon. I don't know what his criteria is, but there's way more books than 12 that talk about the resurrection. Maybe it means like that specifically only the resurrection, like Gary Habermas type stuff. But what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I've got more than 12 books right above my monitor that talk about the resurrection. I've got 12 more behind me in my other bookshelf. I got 12 more in my phone. I got 12 more on Audible. But what do you mean the resurrection isn't preached enough? Like, dude. Like, yeah, write more books about the resurrection, but what more is there to say about it? Just look at his arguments. It's the same shit. It's the same shit. Just a little bit different of a package. Just using different words. Abbreviate, not abbreviate. Adumbration, that's the word. Adumbration. He's just throwing new words into old arguments to make them sound fresh. Like, come on. Okay, moving right along. Oh, this is another little bonus thing I wanted to bitch about. Oh, no, I skipped one. Getting ahead of myself. Okay. 39. I'll skip that one. It's not important. Very, very fringe scholarship dates Acts before 62. That is a very fringe position. Most scholars put it in the 90s, somewhere in the 90s. Got loud as shit. Josephus does not say James died believing Jesus was the Messiah. Here it is right here. It was right here. God damn it, where'd it go? It's in chapter 9, wasn't it? Just a sec. I guess I could just say it, but I'd like to show my work. You know what I mean? There we go. Okay. Found it. Thought I found it. Okay, I'm not just gonna. I could have swore it was right there. God damn. Okay, this is personal now. Why isn't this? Yeah, book 20, chapter 9. Oh, 7. 7? Yeah, I can't find it. You know what? Alt F, son. That's what we're doing. Yeah, there it is. Okay. The brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James. That is not saying James thought Jesus was the Messiah. It says Jesus was called the Christ. And another argument, and I'm not sure if I'm married to this, but maybe. The argument is the word Christ is synonymous with just, and is meant to be for James. So it would read, the brother of Jesus, who was called just, whose name is James. So it could be referring to James the Just. But anyway, that's not at all Josephus saying that James died thinking that his brother was the Messiah. It's possible that James died thinking Jesus was the Messiah. That's possible. But that's not what Josephus says. Anyway. Where are we now? Okay. 640. We're on reason 6 now. We got 2 more to go. We're home stretch. Did I miss that? Where'd you go? Okay, we're gonna save time. He's just saying that people who were hostile towards Christianity converted to Christianity, and he cites, of course, Paul. Paul's our earliest reference to this. Paul is not an eyewitness to the resurrection. Paul converting is not evidence that the resurrection happened, because Paul doesn't talk about the resurrection, at least not in the way the Gospels do. He says he has visions and dreams of Jesus. Was not a witness to the resurrection. So that argument falls apart. How the fuck is that evidence that the resurrection is historically reliable when your earliest witness was not a witness to it and claims he had his interactions with Jesus were through dreams and visions? Oh, I'm using the wrong tab thing. Sorry, I didn't realize y'all didn't hear the video. That's all right. Yeah, like I said, all he was saying was people who were hostile to Christianity converted, and that's evidence. I can share my screen a certain way so y'all can hear the audio, and I didn't do that this past time. Okay. All right. Last point. Y'all having fun so far? I'm having fun so far. I don't care if y'all are having fun. I'm having fun. I'm having enough fun for all of us together as a family. Nope, that's too far. Nope, 44. There you go. God, I'm dumb.
Those of you with questions, type question in bold and just keep your question as succinct and to the point as possible. We'll go to that. Your last one I find interesting. You said Jesus' resurrection is the only basis for making sense of suffering. So this is not a historical argument. This is more
it is not,
philosophical,
Sean. You are correct.
Existential argument. Why do you think his resurrection is the only basis for really making?
Can y'all still not hear the audio? I'm not sure what I can do about that. Yeah, a TikTok stream can hear just fine. Fuck is wrong with y'all over here in YouTube land? Huh? Operator error, I think. What are y'all doing? All right, well, I'm playing it anyway. It's not long. I'll recap it.
Suffering.
We said earlier that if Christianity is a resurrection-less Christianity, or as I point out in the intro section of my book, if the resurrection is just as William Telford, who examined me, a Markan scholar who was a disciple of William Barclay, he was my examiner in Oxford. If the resurrection is, to use his words, imaginative storytelling, then we have no faith at all, Sean. I don't know how you can be a Christian and not believe
See
in
me
the
in the
physical
comments,
bodily
losing my shit.
resurrection of Christianity, of Christ, because we don't see that kind of faith reflected in the New Testament documents. Tom Wright has done a magisterial job in hundreds of pages pointing out that everywhere we see Jesus' resurrection, it's a physical bodily resurrection. I mean,
No, every time you see Jesus' resurrection, it is not a physical bodily resurrection. Paul does not say it's a fleshly, physical bodily resurrection. In fact, he says the flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God.
hammered that case home with a slam
Yeah,
dunk.
our earliest account.
And what I've noticed, Sean, in my travels ministering to individuals, real people, I didn't read this in a book. Think of my good friends, Dan and Lynn Wagner in Santa Cruz, California, who lost both of their daughters in a car accident. And he said, Jeremiah, the only reason I'm able to go on losing all of my children in the same moment is I know I will see them again. The promise of the resurrection is the...
I just had a memory that I have not had in a long time. One of my church services, I'm pretty sure this was our Easter service, actually. They played a video of, I think it was either a bus and a van or two school buses that collided and killed everyone died. All the children died. And from that, two of the parents, one from one bus and a parent of a child who died in the other bus or van, I can't remember, met and fell in love and got married. And they were like, God is so good. Look at how he redeemed this horrible situation. I'm sitting there mortified, like, why did you show us that on Easter? You know what would have been a better miracle? God stopping the bus from crashing and killing everybody. That would have been the great miracle. Instead, no, two people fall in love out of this. That's cool. I don't want to worship that God. Worship this God. Really bad shit might happen to you. And then, like, you'll find a piece of candy on the ground or something. So, worth it, really. Dude,
the only thing that keeps me
outta here.
going. I'm not living for the 80 or so years on this planet. I'm living for the resurrection. And I wrote this book with my little sister in mind, Jenny Lee. They lost their son, stillborn. We use his name. We say his name in the present, Wesley. Wesley is with Jesus. The first time that he opened his eyes ever in his life, he saw Jesus face to face. And so
that's just a source of comfort that people have to create in their mind to cope with loss. That's normal, totally natural to do that. If you want to do that, go right ahead. But that is not evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. That's what I'm trying to say. You believing that your religion is true is not evidence that your religion is true. No matter how hard you believe it. Okay. I think we're done. Yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, I had some questions. If y'all got any questions, ask me. Did y'all enjoy this? This is the first time I've done anything like this. I'm kind of testing the waters. Let me know if y'all want me to do more screaming into the void for the audience. I might do that more. Sad you came at the end. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, the whole thing's up on YouTube. Once I close out the live stream, everybody will be able to watch it for forever. We're at an hour. Perfect. Looking for the questions in the chat. You guys asked me. Where did... I'm not seeing any of the questions that were asked. That's all right. Oh, here we go. Melanie, if you're still here. Melanie Joy asked, oops. Yeah. The oldest New Testament is the oldest New Testament manuscript dated to the 2nd century. Yes, that's is it P52? Is it P45? I get those two mixed up. Let's look. Where's the 42? Oh, that's not it. I have a picture of it. There it is. Yeah, P52. I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, this is P52. It's about the size of a credit card. It's front and back, and it's the portion of John that's the Jesus trial before Pilate. That's what's on there. Yeah, it's dated to about the 2nd century. It is our earliest fragmentary manuscript. It's pretty cool. I want a replica of it, actually. All right. Any other questions? Don't
forget the TikToks.
TikToks. Yeah. Okay, TikToks. Yeah. Still got a lot of y'all hanging with me down there in TikTok land. Appreciate y'all. I thought I'd look down and there'd be like 13 people still watching. There's 75. Appreciate y'all. I do. I really do. Now people are just going to start leaving. Like, oh, fuck this guy. He's paying attention to us now. We don't like that. Let's get out of here. Let's go find somebody else. Yep, I'm 72. All right. Appreciate it. Okay. I'm going to wrap up the stream on YouTube. I'll hang out on TikTok a little bit, though. Thanks, guys. Again, let me know, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If I get good feedback, I'll do more things like this in the future. But yeah. So until then, y'all go have a good
Hold on to your butts.